All right, let's talk about blockchain. It's a word you probably heard a million times, right? Usually in the same breath as cryptocurrencies, a ton of hype, and honestly, a whole lot of confusion. But what is it really? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to get to the heart of its promise, look at where it's actually being used, and get real about the big hurdles it still needs to jump. Okay, let's get into it.
But first, let's just start with one big provocative idea. Just imagine for a second, what if the internet that we use every single day had a fundamental layer for trust, just built right in? You know, a way for us to exchange value and information securely, transparently, and without needing a huge corporation or a bank sitting in the middle of everything. That one question, that's the key to understanding the entire vision behind blockchain.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the big promise of the technology. Then we'll see where it's popping up out in the real world. After that, we'll talk about what's holding it back, the major hurdles. And finally, we'll look at the road ahead.
So you might be asking, why are we talking about this now? Well, this chart tells the whole story. It shows the growth of academic research into blockchain. For years, it was just kind of simmering along, and then, boom. Around 2016, interest just absolutely exploded. The world's top researchers, innovators, and industries are all scrambling to figure this out, which makes understanding it right now more important than ever.
So that brings us right to our first section, the promise of blockchain. What is the big idea that has gotten so many people so excited?
At its core, this is all it is, a shared digital ledger. Seriously, think of it like a universal notebook that everyone involved has their own copy of. When a transaction happens, it gets written down as a block, and then it's added to this growing chain. And because everybody has a copy, you can't just go in and secretly change something without everybody else's copy disagreeing. The crucial part here is that the system doesn't need a central referee, like a bank, to approve everything. The network itself is the referee.
And if you want a sense of just how big that idea could be, just look at this map of potential opportunities. Now, don't try to read every little box. You'll go cross-eyed. The main point is to see that this goes way, way beyond just Bitcoin or currency. We're talking about potentially reinventing business models and creating new efficiencies in finance, healthcare, even government, the whole shebang.
So let's break that down a bit. The core opportunities are huge. First off, you can get rid of those middlemen we talked about, which cuts down on costs and hassle. You can build brand new business models, like a true peer-to-peer shared economy. It makes everything more transparent, because everyone can see the public ledger. And then you have smart contracts. Now, these are cool. Think of them like a super smart digital vending machine. You put in your money, that's the condition, and the machine automatically spits out your snack. That's the outcome. No cashier needed. You can automate all kinds of agreements this way. Ultimately, it's all about building a system of fairness and trust for our digital lives.
This quote from a researcher, Felix Glazer, just nails it. The goal here is a trust-free system. Now, that sounds a little weird, but it doesn't mean you don't trust anyone. It means you don't have to. The trust is baked right into the technology itself.
Okay, that all sounds amazing in theory. Fantastic. But is anyone actually using it? Let's move on to our next section and find out. Blockchain in the wild.
Hey, remember that explosion of research we saw a minute ago? Well, this chart shows us where all that brainpower is going. And look at this. The biggest slice of the pie at 42% is applications. So this isn't just theory anymore. The academic and tech communities are laser-focused on building real things with this tech.
And here's a map of where people are trying to build those applications. Again, don't worry about reading every single thing. Just get a sense of the sheer breadth of it all. It's moving out from its home turf in finance and branching into supply chains, healthcare, the Internet of Things, and government. Let's zoom in on a couple of these.
So finance is the obvious place to start. For sending money across borders, you've got companies like Ripple trying to fix that slow, expensive old system where your money has to hop between a bunch of different banks. With blockchain, it's much more direct. The Nasdaq has even piloted it for settling stock trades, and banks are looking at it to share customer verification data, so you don't have to submit the same pile of documents over and over again.
But what about stuff you can actually hold? Well, in supply chain management, blockchain creates a tamper-proof history. Imagine tracking a head of lettuce all the way from the farm to the truck to the grocery store. Every single step gets logged on the blockchain. So if there's ever a recall, you know exactly which batch is affected instantly. The same idea applies to things like pharmaceuticals, making sure drugs are authentic and haven't been stored improperly.
And the potential goes even further. Take healthcare. Projects like MedRec are tackling a problem we've all had. Your health records are scattered across 10 different clinics and hospitals. They're exploring using blockchain to give you a single, secure key to your own data, which you can then grant access to any doctor you want. And in government, people are looking at it for creating unchangeable land ownership records, or even for building more transparent and secure e-voting systems.
Okay, so if the promise is this grand and the applications are so diverse, what's the holdup? Why hasn't blockchain just taken over the world already? And that brings us to the most critical part of this explainer, the major hurdles.
Of course, for every map of opportunities, there's got to be a map of challenges. And this one is just as complicated. You see, the road from a cool idea to a working reality is absolutely littered with technical, legal, and just plain practical roadblocks.
Researchers have kind of sorted these hurdles into 4 big buckets. First, there's just a lack of clarity. A lot of businesses still don't really get how to use it, and there's a huge shortage of developers who know how to build it. Second, governance and legal stuff. The law is still playing catch-up. Third, security and privacy. While blockchain is secure, it's not made of magic. There are risks like a 51% attack, where one group could theoretically gain control of the network. And finally, you've got a whole grab bag of other major technical challenges like scalability and energy consumption.
And this right here gets to a central dilemma, a real paradox. One of blockchain's greatest strengths, immutability, the fact that data can't be changed, is also one of its biggest challenges. It's awesome for integrity, but what happens when you have privacy laws like Europe's GDPR with the right to be forgotten? How do you delete somebody's data from a system that was specifically designed to never be deleted? It's a fundamental conflict.
Here is another massive hurdle, and it can be summed up in a single number: 7. The original Bitcoin blockchain can only process about 7 transactions per second. Now compare that to a network like Visa, which handles thousands. This is a massive, massive scalability problem. It's a bottleneck that absolutely has to be solved before blockchain can handle mainstream global demand.
So the challenges are significant, no doubt about it, but work is being done to overcome them. And that brings us to our final section, the path to adoption. So, what's next? The good news is that people in academia are developing structured ways for us to think about this. This is called the Blockchain Innovation Adoption Framework, or BAF. Now, we don't need to get lost in the weeds here, but the key takeaway is that we're moving toward a methodical, step-by-step process for businesses to evaluate and implement this technology. We're moving beyond that initial chaotic hype. We can simplify that whole framework into 3 basic stages. First up is initiation. That's just learning about the tech and figuring out if it even solves a real problem you have. Second is the adoption decision. This is where you evaluate the idea seriously and actually commit people and money to it. And third is implementation. Actually building something, running pilot programs, and getting people to use it. It is a long journey from an idea to a reality.
So, to put it all together, the journey for blockchain is far from over. Moving from all that initial hype to being an everyday reality means solving those big technical problems, like scalability, untangling all the legal knots, and most importantly, moving beyond cool experiments to build applications that deliver real, measurable value in the real world. In the end, blockchain offers a brand new formula for something that is deeply human: trust. It's suggesting that we can build systems where trust isn't just based on a handshake or a brand's reputation, but it's a feature of the code itself. The hurdles we've talked about are technical, for sure, but the biggest challenge might just be a human one. Are we, our businesses, our societies, are we ready to adopt this new way of thinking? That's the real question. Thanks for watching.